Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to tonight's planning and control meeting. Before we go on, if you've all got mobile phones, can you either switch them off please or put them on silent? Thank you. Apologies. Okay. Late items to be introduced, there are none. Declarations of interest? No. Okay, minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of April 2017. Are we okay with that? Yep, okay, thank you. Minutes of the Conservation Area Advisory Committee held on the 9th of March. Thank you. Appeal decisions. To tell us about that, we have Mr. Clark in today.
Thank you, Chair. 3 appeals, 2 sites. The first one is at Riverlights on the Morlidge, and the proposal was a digital media screen. Now, it was a rather large screen, in old money, 22 feet by 16 feet square, 6.8 metres by 4.8 metres, just outside the city centre conservation area. The inspector felt that it would be a very large prominent appendage, given its height and illumination on the building. But he felt because it's located on a protruding element of the glazed section of the building, and the building is unashamedly modern in design, and the proposed digital media screen would be compatible with this appearance. He felt the screen would complement the modern elements of this part of the city, and the fact that the screen would be visible from the conservation area is not in itself harmful. So he allowed the appeal. It probably is bigger than the Co-op cow, although not as tall, not as high up. The other 2 appeals are on Blaegreaves Lane, and these were to do with trees. Work proposed is to prune 1 pine tree and pollard a lime. Members may recall we've had appeals at this site, 22 Blaegreaves Lane, before. One of the proposals was to reduce the crown of the pine by 7 metres and pollard the lime tree to a height of 25 feet. Now, the inspector did a site visit and he felt that both trees are mature specimens situated either side of the driveway at the front of the appellant's property, next to the junction of Blaegreaves Lane and Wilson's Road, and the trees are in a very prominent position. And he felt that the proposed works would result in considerable harm to the character and appearance of the area, quite rightly. He addressed issues of light reaching the front of the property, that the susceptibility of pine shedding branches, and also the proximity to a telegraph pole and telephone wires, and was not convinced by the arguments proposed that outweighed the benefit to the area of these 2 trees. So the appeal was dismissed.
Just in terms of the inspector's decision and our local adopted tree policy, does our local adopted tree policy, is that something that he has to take into consideration formally in the decision on the appeal?
Chair, the inspector looked at all our policies, so we would look at the health of the tree, the visual impact, and this was about visual amenity, visual impact, and the policies that support that. So it was clear to the inspector that the policies that we assess trees with, not just the health and the quality of the tree, but the visual appearance, and the visual appearance outweighed anything else in this case.
Thank you, Paul. Item 7, development control performance, January to March 2016-17.
Thank you, Chair. On page 2 at 4.2, members will note in the major category, government target is 60% in 13 weeks, and I've highlighted here 100% performance January to March on our majors, and non-majors government target is 65% in 8 weeks, and we hit 99%. Why we couldn't get 100, I don't know. So, excellent performance from the team on that quarter. At 4.8, members will note that the government's targets are looking at our performance over a longer term, and in this case October 2015 to March 17, and that's the qualifying period for designations as a poor performing authority, where we have to exceed 60%. We got 95%, so we're well above a poor performing authority. That said, we have to keep going. We can't just relax on our laurels. We have to keep moving forward and putting the emphasis back into planning, and we regularly monitor our performance, as you know, through the monthly statistics. Over that same time period, non-major applications in the quarter, we were 34% above government targets, so again, doing really well. And to put it all into context, at 4.14, it shows you the figures over the respective years. And you can see a marked increase in performance since 2013-14. And the paragraph below about the eye on the national targets now, a can-do attitude. We seek to achieve permissions rather than refusals. It would be quite easy to hit targets and just refuse everything when it comes in. But really, Derby doesn't want to get that message or get that reputation. We are going forward, dealing with applications as best we can. And I know members have endorsed our performance in the past. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I'm sure we'll all like to congratulate Paul and the whole department and all the officers for the very good work they do. Just goes to show you what a good committee we are. We keep them on their toes. Without us, they wouldn't be here. No, come on, Robin. Wouldn't go that far. Right, okay, number 8 now, applications to be considered tonight. And as you probably are aware, there have been a couple of withdrawals, namely Lidl and 10 Farley Road for different reasons. So we will move on to pages 46 to 54, which is the car park adjacent to Ely Walk, Gerrard Street, Derby. And to tell us about this will be Sarah.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. This is a full application for erection of 4 terrace dwellings on part of a residents-only car park accessed off Gerrard Street near the city centre. It's a small social housing scheme proposed by Derby Homes to provide affordable family housing. It's an area which currently has a mix of social housing and private housing, comprising of terraced, semis and flats. I've got 2 updates for members. This morning we received a revised site layout plan which shows 5 additional car parking spaces to be provided in the retained car park, which takes the total of retained spaces to 19 spaces. There were previously 14. This is in response to concerns raised by local residents about the loss of parking. The Highways Officer has seen this plan and he is satisfied that the parking arrangement and number of parking spaces is acceptable. So there's no concerns from Highways. We've also had to add an additional planning condition to your report. As recommended by the Council's tree officer, further assessments are required for the trees to be retained on the site. And unfortunately, the applicant has not been able to undertake those works before committee, so we're attaching it as a condition to require a tree constraints plan and an arboricultural impact assessment to be undertaken and submitted prior to development commencing. To the main body of the report, the site is currently a car park with 34 parking spaces for use of existing residents who are permit holders. Derby Homes have undertaken surveys of the car park prior to the application being submitted, which showed that the car park is currently in use by around 8 to 10 vehicles at any one time. Visits by the case officer also, and also views from Google Street View show that this finding is concurrent, that is the level of use of the car park. It also suggests that there is a limited demand for car parking in this area, on this car park. However, local residents have raised objections on the grounds that loss of car parking and a shortage of parking will be provided as a result of the development. Evidence of parking habits at the car park suggests that it has regular use by only up to 10 vehicles, which is equivalent, no less than the amount of car parking which will be retained on the site after the development is implemented. The applicant is seeking to provide affordable housing on part of a car park fronting onto Gerrard Street, to retain the remaining areas car park for current permit holders and providing one space for each of the new dwellings. There will be 19 retained spaces in total. There were no other highway safety concerns in regard to the level of access and servicing for the proposal. The access is being moved to the southern part of the site, as you can see on the screen, currently it's in the northern part of the site. The design and form and layout of the housing is considered to be of a good quality to complement the residential character of this part of the city. There will be no substantive loss of residential amenity for existing residents. And the number of small trees in the car park, 3 of which are to be removed to form the development. The Council's tree office has not raised concerns about removal of trees and is satisfied that the retained trees can be maintained subject to the required tree surveys and tree protection. So in conclusion, the development will deliver a welcome affordable housing scheme to address a housing need and is compliant with the relevant national and local planning policies in relation to housing delivery. You have one speaker.
Thank you, Sarah. I believe we have a speaker on this, Mrs. Barley. Good evening, Mrs. Barley. You have 3 minutes to speak. Do you want to switch your microphone on?
It's now going to be 19.
Yes, that's correct. The plan on the screen has been updated.
As of when?
As received this morning.
This morning. Right, well that makes all my stuff irrelevant because that's exactly what we wanted. So,
you see,
thank you.
You see, Mrs. Barley, we aim to
I just
please.
wish I'd known this morning. I wouldn't have had to prepare this. But thank you. That's great. That will put a lot of our minds at rest. That
Well, it's been nice seeing you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's that can-do attitude.
Any of the members want to ask Councillor Kerr?
This is, even with 19 rather than 14 parking spaces, it's still a smallish car park. But we're giving it a very wide entrance, which is going to be vehicle priority rather than pedestrian priority. And I would expect there to be far more pedestrian movements along that footway than car movements across it. And therefore, I would suggest that instead of having a curbed crossing, we have a dropped crossing for the entrance to the car park, which presumably we can do. It may even be covered by I think there's a condition that talks about changing the previous footway crossings. But the plan that we're being shown doesn't indicate that, so maybe we need a new plan to show a change. The second point I was going to make is that the comment related to this general area and there being a shortage of car parking spaces, albeit this one, this having enough now. And I wondered whether it was a development where we could encourage, and I don't think we can require at this stage, for Derby Homes to talk to Co-Wheels to see if it is a site where Co-Wheels would welcome a location for one of their cars, and if so, for them to negotiate and provide that. Because that, again, might enable local people to have access to a car without having to own one.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Sarah, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, we can put a dropped and curbed crossing condition onto the permission. That's what you'd wish, that's not a problem. I think it's for Derby Homes Way to contact Co-Wheels and talk to car sharing. We can put a note on it, and obviously I can contact Derby Homes to request that, if you wish.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. The recommendation is to grant permission. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As members will note from the description of development, there are two elements effectively to this application: the single-storey rear extension and the change of use from dwelling to housing multiple occupation, or HIMO as the report refers. The extension to the rear, the single-storey extension, is permitted development if it's undertaken before the change of use. So currently it's a house, so currently that extension is permitted development. They can do it. But for completeness, they've shown it on these plans as the extended kitchen. However, saying all that, I don't think there are any reasonable planning grounds to object to a single-storey extension to the property in this position. The second element of the proposal is the change of use, which involves effectively adding an extra bedroom to the dwelling. A 6-bedroomed property, in planning terms, is a dwelling. When you add a 7th, it becomes a house in multiple occupation. And that is what is being proposed here. There are letters of objection saying this is a 4-bedroom property and they don't use the downstairs rooms aren't bedrooms, but you can change those without planning permission, because you could have 6 people living there, 6 bedrooms there without planning permission. So in amenity terms, the report advises members that the room sizes meet the legislation. It's separate from planning, but it meets the HIMO legislation. There are no highway objections to the proposal. Indeed, cycle racks are provided to the rear of the property. It's shown on the slide before us. And overall, I cannot demonstrate planning grounds to refuse permission. And when it all boils down to it, it is, after all, 1 additional bedroom to this dwelling, end terrace property. Chair, you have speakers.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, we have 2 speakers. The first one is Mr. Singh. Good evening, Mr. Singh. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, good evening. Thank you to the Honourable as far as amenities to the local area and things like that is concerned. That's it. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So, technology. The property is near London Road. So, London Road, I personally don't drive either, so I don't have a car either. So, for me, and, you know, when I do a development that's like a HMO, providing sort of making sure that there's good access to transport and bicycles and things like that, I think is very important, and I'll ensure that that is included as part of the development. I was delighted to read the report by the highways, which have said that there's not going to be material impact to the highways. And indeed, I do think we should be encouraging as much use of public transport and cycle facilities as possible. That's really all I wanted to say. I think it's not too difficult application, and I was delighted to read the reports from the case officer who's spent some time to put together the information within your packs. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Just to let you know, we don't always agree with the case officer. Mrs. Hussain. Again, you have 3 minutes. Okay.
Right. I live in the area. I just live down the road from the property. Number 133 is one of 4 large properties that share an entrance alleyway. Changing 133 to a HMO would present parking difficulties. At present, cars park right up to the junction at Beatty Street. It is very difficult to turn into and out of this junction. In fact, cars park right up to the junctions that exist on that block, on the left and the right, the roads that are Whisgreaves Road and Alistry Street. Problems are made worse when there's football. We're not that far from Pride Park. Emergency vehicles will have problems getting through if there are 7+ occupants and more there. How can the landlord guarantee that all the tenants, 7 of them, will be cyclists? When we have tried to contact the landlord on one occasion, I remember last year, when there was a problem with the delivery of the skip. The delivery driver skip needed cars to be moved so he could place the skip on the front area of 135 next door, not 133. He had been instructed to do so. When neighbours asked him if he should do this, he said, I've been told to do that. And we weren't able to contact the landlord. The builders weren't able to give us a number or contact him. We're worried about problems that might arise concerning tenants, shared entryway, drains and rubbish. Outbuildings at the back of those properties, 133 and next door, cross over boundaries. There's a pool building and there's a shed at the back, and the owners of 137 and 139 were asked by a note through the door last year if they wanted to sell their properties to this landlord. Number 135 is looking to be on sale this year, and it is a bigger property and could house 9+ tenants. Number 137, next door to that, is owned by a single gentleman who resides there. He is also preparing and starting work to convert his house to a HMO. It's also bigger than 133 and will probably have 8+ tenants. He plans to live there in a room himself as well. Where are all these people going to park their cars and motorbikes? How are they going to share the entrance alleyway? 139 is a family home that has young children. Will they still be able to use that entrance alley? And the owner is disabled and has inquired into a disability parking space in front of her house. I just feel it's not, and the residents along with me that have put their forms in, it won't be nice to have 3 possible HMOs. What's stopping the other 2 becoming HMOs as well? And they're going to be about at least 24 individuals, most likely male, to be living there. You know, it's a residential area.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Clark, would you like to come back?
In the past, I've said to this committee that no one has a right to park on the highway. Nobody has a right to park on the highway, apart from if there's a disabled space marked out for you. Planning cannot guarantee, we cannot guarantee that future occupiers of any property are car-free, whether they drive or do not drive. What we do is assess the merits of the particular applications, and each one on its own merits. So we, and highway colleagues will back me up, we do seek to ensure that there is sufficient car parking provided within an application site. You can't park anything on this site apart from use of bicycles, bicycle racks at the back of this property. The reasonableness of users and of the landlord, again, isn't a planning matter. So it's about give and take, it's tolerance, isn't it? It's how we live with our neighbours. As I said, each case is decided on its own merits, and as I said at the beginning, 6 tenants in a dwelling is a dwelling. It doesn't come before planning. It only comes before when it becomes a HMO, when it becomes 7. So we might get other applications, we don't know. But this one, there are no objections from statutory colleagues on highway grounds. I'd find it difficult to resist this extra bedroom, refuse it on highway grounds. And just, I don't know, as a matter of practice, if you're thinking of being a tenant of a property where there's a lot of on-street parking, wouldn't you just cross it off the list if you had a car? I'm sure I would. But I mean, that's individual taste, isn't it? And again, you can't guarantee you're going to park your car out on the street if you took one of the rooms in this property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Anything from Highways?
Chair, just to reiterate what Ian said, essentially it's an additional bedroom. It would be very, very difficult to argue that that will cause a significant highways impact.
Thank you. Members of the committee? Okay. The recommendation is to grant. Councillor Kerr.
Just for clarity, this isn't an area I know particularly well, and I wasn't aware of the car parking space that the overhead view of the area shows adjacent to this. And I just wondered where access is gained to that car parking area. I'm presuming it's in private ownership. It's
through here.
So that, and is it in private ownership?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Because it is adjacent to the application site.
Sorry, Chair.
So it would give opportunity for negotiations and additional car parking to the rear of the buildings if that is what was required to be able to let the bedrooms, I suggest. But I don't think it's something that we need to consider at this point.
Councillor Anderson.
Hi there, thank you. I mean, very clearly, there's no grounds for refusal from that, have been laid out, and that's been made very clear. But I think that there does have to be some importance, and I don't know whether this is a planning issue, but there does need to be some kind of organisational memory that looks at an area that is so clearly full of family homes, and if that becomes an area that suddenly changes in demographics so much because of so many houses of multiple occupancy, I just think we have to be careful with that. And I don't know what planning grounds we would ever have with that regard, but particularly with it not being near a university or a student centre per se. But very clearly, I will be voting along with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. If there's no more... Sorry, Councillor Ward.
Just think, there must be lots and lots of houses all over Derby where a seventh person is there. Somebody gives birth, there's an extra person. And we wouldn't know about it. This applicant has done the honourable thing. He's come forward, gone through all the plans, gone through all the discussions, applied for planning permission and got it right. And I think he should be commended for that. And certainly we should grant permission, not look for why we can't. We should grant it. And I think it's a good application. We're not looking at any other ones. We're not looking at hundreds and hundreds of them. We're not looking at the area changing for one house. This is one application and we're looking at this on its merits. And I think we should grant it.
Thank you, Robin. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. Policies CP3 and H13 talk about layout and size, etc. Would the officers be able to just, so I can sort of square this circle a little bit, at what point would the tipping point be where those policies would be breached in terms of, is it just the room size, is it the overall amenity of the building? Just trying to give me an example of where it would go to the point where it wouldn't be acceptable.
Chair, I guess if I received objections on, for instance, on highway grounds, that there is insufficient parking in this vicinity for a new build, because a new build, the site generates no parking at the moment and will generate X number of spaces. That's when and it can't accommodate it on site. So that's when it tips the balance. I'm not a highway engineer, so I would be relying, if we refused it and there was an appeal, it would be the highway colleagues that stand up and defend the appeal, and they would need to show significant harm to highway safety as a result of that extra parking on street in this case. every case on its merits. The scheme next door that Councillor Kerr referred to has a car park at the back. It's a relatively newish scheme. I've been here a while and I remember it before it was the houses. And we secured the car parking provision at the back because all those houses... James, can we go back to the aerial? All those houses with those white elements in them at the back were new. So there's what's there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units there. And that was on the basis of a previous use on the site, but we required car parking close to the corner to ensure that it provided sufficient off-street car parking to accommodate its own needs. So each case on its merits, but there's very little option on this site to provide any, unless, of course, as Councillor Kerr said, the applicant were to talk to the neighbouring car park owner and to get a car park in the back. Councillor Wood mentioned numbers of people occupying. My neighbours have 5 cars. It drives me mad because they can't park their cars on their drive. But we accept it. Everybody lives together. We accept it and we get on with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. If there's no further comments, the recommendation is to grant permission. All those that are in favour? That's granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall an application on this site being considered at a committee meeting earlier this year. This current application seeks to address the concerns and the previous reasons for refusal, which are set out on pages 62 and 63 of your committee report. The application seeks permission to demolish 10 garages and change the use of land to a secure and private car park for a local business that is affected through the implementation of the Our City and Our River scheme. The car park will provide 10 vehicle spaces and the end users will also use 5 garages. The application also seeks permission to fell 11 Leyland cypress trees. The application site is located to the rear of an existing car parking court and accessed directly off City Road and is within the Chester Green Conservation Area. The application site is not visible from City Road but is visible from pedestrian links to the west of the application site. The main amendments to the original scheme are set out on pages 61 of your report and include the number of surface spaces has been reduced from 12 to 10 to allow landscaping and planting, the erection of a 1.8 metre vehicle bar steel fence which will be finished in black along both sides of the boundary, and the erection of heritage lighting columns. The comments from Conservation Area Advisory Committee and the Built Environment Officer are also set out on pages 63 of your report. Neither object to the application, with the Built Environment Officer concluding that the overall impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area would be neutral. There have been no third-party objections or representations as part of this application. There are not considered to be any highways implications arising as a direct result of the proposal, and the proposal is broadly acceptable in policy terms. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out on page 70 of your report, and there are no speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Laura. We have no speakers on this, but Robin's going to make sure he speaks.
Yeah, I strongly objected to the previous application. I don't object to this one. I think they have listened to us. We were right to refuse it last time. This is a much more sensitive treatment. I'm not quite sure that there was ever a heritage lamppost that high, but I think they come as standard because they light a bit more and it gives a bit of security. But yeah, I think this is much more sensitive and I welcome it.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more speakers, then the recommendation is to grant permission. All those in favour? Jolly good, thank you. Moving on to the most exciting part of the evening, which is the potential future site visits. I did at the start of it, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I think I mentioned at the start of it that Lidl and I forgot the other one, had been withdrawn, Farley Road. So it's some legal issues with that, and it wouldn't have been sort of right for us to try to debate that without getting the relevant answers.
I'm just glad that lady who withdrew her objection didn't have to sit through all that before she found out that it had changed.
And then Sarah, seeing as you're eager.
We've only got 3 majors this evening, 2 of which are related to the Our City, Our River flood defence scheme. As is this first one is part of the mitigation works of the Our City, Our River development, and they're looking at changes to the sports pitches and tennis courts on the Darleyfield site. So it's an amendment to the OCOR application which was granted last year to relocate the sports pitches and enhance the facilities on that site. Nope. The second one is also related to Our City, Our River. It's a development along the riverside, City Road, and part of the scheme is the erection of a 2.8 metre high flood defence wall along the riverside. It involves the erection of 3-storey office blocks fronting onto the river. Nope. Nope. Third and final one you've seen before. It's the former Ken Ives site, which came to this committee last year and was refused on the grounds that there was insufficient Section 106 package contributions. This is a resubmission of the same scheme. There's no change really in the actual form of the application. It's just this time they have put forward a better 106 package.
Okay, so nobody wants to go on a site visit. We're all very disappointed with that, but thank you for attending tonight's meeting.